I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
I'm heading out to Eden. Hey, brother.
What? What just happened there?
The way to Eden.
I don't know that. Oh, you're getting old school here, aren't you?
You're clearly a Herbert. Or no, that's the guy who got fired from being the showrunner.
Can we talk about Landrew in relation to this episode, too?
No, we're gonna talk about what happened on Star Trek Discovery this week.
Right.
The sophomore episode of the sophomore season, tonight on the 54th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast.
Is it sophomore when instead of having 4 levels, there's going to be like 14 levels?
I see people using that as it just means like the second thing all the time, which might be incorrect, but that's the way we're using it.
All right, sure.
But the episode, New Eden.
Right. You know what, we talked about the first season had like such good titles, and the second season are not quite so immediately grabbery.
Yeah, they're not snoozy, boring titles like sometimes we've gotten in Star Trek.
Like Memories or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one you always bring up. What show was that an episode
I don't know. But it's the kind of thing. It sounds like it could be a Voyager or a Next Generation episode. Or even a Deep Space Nine
even
episode.
DS9 at some episodes, like The Ship.
Yeah.
It's an actual episode.
Yeah.
But no, we are talking about New Eden, directed by Jonathan Frakes, written by Vaughn Wilmot and Sean Cochran, based on a story by Akiva Goldsman and Sean Cochran. And, Dave, we're just going to go ahead and give our opening statements of how we feel about this, and then we'll get into more...
Before we do the summary?
Yeah, and then...
All right.
Then we'll go into a more detailed approach, but just to start things off, I think my initial reaction to this episode is that this is the most traditional Star Trek story that we've gotten outside of comics and books and stuff since at least 2005 when Enterprise was on the air. Maybe even more traditional than the stuff in Season 4 of Enterprise. And I feel like this is a story that could have been told with any Star Trek show, with any ship and crew. And I do feel that they kind of sacrificed some of the Discovery uniqueness. But I still enjoyed it.
Do you think the Orville fans are going to come running back?
Well, the Orville is not doing very well right now, so I think that there might be...
They're going to come crawling back no matter what.
Yeah, so funny you say that. I was watching the Trek Yards YouTube channel. They were doing a live stream talking about this episode.
Yep.
And actually, someone had commented, why don't you guys talk about the Orville anymore? And they said, well, it's because no one is really watching those videos when we talk about that. So Orville fandom's kind of dying down. I'm wondering what the future of that show will be like, but
I've seen the first 3 episodes and I thought that they have been getting progressively better, but it didn't like jump out and grab me. Not to go to Orville suddenly, but I feel like some of the hatred is like a little bit of just people ready to see it fail after its surprise success. But getting back to Star Trek,
I think the critics are liking it more now than they were in the first season.
Oh, are they?
But anyways, yeah. But like enough about the Snorville.
Oh, what?
We're gonna talk about the real
Star Trek,
real shit, right?
Yeah. Everybody obviously agrees disco is the real thing. I've never seen anybody descending on a message board. I think that's a reasonable point. That it does seem like it felt a little less disco and a little. I mean, especially with Pike almost in that very Kirk-like role. And an away team, and a planet with a particular sort of problem and a mystery to solve, and even the sort of the A plot and B plot, one of which is the planet could be destroyed, and the other is the planet had the mystery of the strange religious society. felt very classic, very TOS. That's like specifically a TOS thing to have like multiple plots intersecting and hitting like that. But that said, you felt that way. Did you like it?
Yeah.
I liked it quite a bit too, and it actually fulfilled, I suppose, one of my list of our 10 things we'd like to see in season 2, which was I got the planetary exploration episode, and it also, like, I think set course for what they had only touched on. Well, they had touched on in some ways in the first episode, which was that thematic faith versus science thing, which is going to be run throughout the season.
That
we've
is,
kind of heard.
The theme of season 2.
Okay. And that contentiousness was right there, front and center, in like half a dozen scenes probably. I liked it, but with every episode of Discovery, I had this kind of weird thing where, if I watch a kind of very standard episode of Star Trek of the previous series, I'll talk about did they do the right thing or not, and what do I think of the morality of it. But I don't. I usually can immediately say I liked that episode or I didn't. For whatever reason, I have to wrestle a little bit more with Disco. Whether it's being more traditional, like this episode, or a little bit more its own thing, like in some other episodes. I think it's because it's a little unpredictable that I sort of have to wrap my head around it a little bit longer than I need. I need more head-wrapping time. But I'm going to say broadly, yes, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Cool. Well, we'll discuss various topics of that in just a second. Yep. But first, we're just going to go through the warp speed summary of this episode.
Yep.
Just real quickly, going to spit out everything that happened and recap it for all of y'all.
All right, hit it.
So we start off back on the Discovery, now under new management. Captain Pike has traded in his gold shirt for a blue disco shirt, and he's redecorated Lorca's ready room. Michael has Spock's tablet. Yeah, she actually calls it a tablet, but from the ending of last week's episode, she shows Pike the log entry on it and drawing of the 7 red bursts. We learn that Pike actually knows the location of Spock after all. We'll get more on that later. Burnham and Pike's conversation is interrupted as Tilly has located another red burst. Unfortunately, it is on the far side of the Beta Quadrant. That's too far for warp drive, but hold on, this is the Disco, aka the weird mushroom ship with the spore drive. So, Stamets, and apparently he stuck around after all, he plugs into the mycelial network, and the ship jumps to the source of the red burst, the planet Terralisium. Much to their surprise, there is a distress call coming from the planet, a distress signal from Earth 200 years earlier during World War III. And get this, there are humans from the mid-21st century living on this planet, and the signal is coming from an Earth church in the middle of one of their towns. So because these humans are from pre-warp Earth, the Prime Directive is in full effect. Pike and Burnham beam down disguised as locals and take along Owasikin. That's the ops officer lady with the dreadlocks on the bridge, who never gets to do much until right now. On the surface of the planet, they investigate the church. Turns out it is a center of worship for an amalgam of Earth religions. Our gallant heroes are discovered by one of the locals, though, and they simply say they are from some other place on the planet north of the town. So apparently there's multiple human settlements here. We learned that the people here, their ancestors, were seeking shelter in the church back on Earth during the chaos of World War III, and a red angel, like the one Burnham saw last week, transported them to the New World. The survivors put together this new religion combining all of their faiths, and they've been living like that in this town called New Eden for 200 years. So Jacob, one of the New Edenites, is skeptical. He begins to question this religion, and we gather that he's been doing this for a while. He pieces together that these undercover Starfleet officers are actually fellow humans visiting from Earth. Jacob's accusations are confirmed when he discovers their Starfleet gear, including a tricorder which Pike used to locate the distress signal beacon. Jacob grabs their Starfleet tech and tries to imprison the trio so he can show off the equipment to the rest of New Eden and prove there is more to the universe than their faith in the Red Angels. However, the Starfleet peeps manage to escape from the basement they're being kept in because Owasikin knows a cool trick with magnets. So, good thing they finally got her off the bridge.
Nobody can pop a lock like her.
with a magnet. So after their great escape, they find Jacob showing off the equipment and telling everyone that these strangers must have come on a starship. Pike tries to explain this away, but he sees one of the villagers, a child playing with a phaser, and he goes into full-on action captain mode and disarms the dumb kid who is probably about to shoot herself in the face, and he falls on the phaser, but it discharges into his ribs and damn near kills him. Now, while all of that is going on the planet, Saru is in command of the ship, and it turns out a bunch of debris from the ring around the planet is about to enter the atmosphere, and for science-y technobabble reasons, that'll cause a radioactive extinction-level event. And Tilly is on the ship studying that dark matter rock that they've been hauling around in the shuttle bay since the last episode, and she comes up with the idea to use its high gravity to drag all of the debris back into the ring. Saru greenlights the plan, Detmer does the required badass flying to position the ship and their high gravity rock, and Stamets jumps them out just in time to pull this maneuver off. The planet is saved, and now they can beam up the landing party and the injured Pike. After recovering in sickbay, Pike feels sorry for Jacob the Skeptic, so he returns to the planet in the dark of night, gives him the full disclosure out of respect, and offers a battery that will turn the lights back on in the church in return for a helmet cam from a World War III soldier. We end the episode with Pike on the ship reviewing the 200-year-old footage from Earth's Third World War, and Pike sees the Red Angel itself in the church during a battle, thus furthering the mystery of the Red Angels and the Red Bursts.
I do have a quick question. Maybe this is just
Okay, what's up? What's on your mind?
The rings around the planet caused this thing that was going to extinguish the planet. Presumably, they were drawn out to that to be there at the time that happened, because that just happened naturally, right? It wasn't something they inadvertently did or caused.
That's an interesting mystery of the Red Bursts, because last week it brought them to the weird asteroid where Tig Notaro and her patients were stranded.
Yeah. So
they could rescue them.
Before they went into the pulsar thing. So this is the second rescue that they've achieved.
Yes. That they were only at the right place at the right time because they were going to where a red burst had popped up.
Right. And if you wanted to, they could have gone to any one of those red bursts, but they happened to, I think, they went to the first one for a specific reason.
Well, that was the only one that was still ignited.
Right. So that was sort of like whatever consciousness or whatever is guiding the red bursts, it was like, go here first. And then the second one they went to because they were led there by the information from Spock, right?
No, they were.
That's right.
Tilly found it.
That's right.
My impression that I'm getting is that these things, they just pop up for like an instant and then they fade away.
Right.
Because when they get there, it's gone.
It's gone, yeah.
But Jacob on the planet, he said, yeah, I saw the red light in the sky. Is that your ship?
Yeah.
So
they clearly, it visibly manifested to the people on the planet and everything, and then it was like, shoop, and gone. Because God told it to go away, obviously. But whatever it is guiding them does seem to have an intelligence and be trying to get them in the exact places at certain times.
Yeah.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure I hadn't missed anything on that one. But yeah, now that we talked about it...
I'm sure you missed all kinds of stuff, but...
I don't know that. What else would I possibly have missed?
I'm just saying, sometimes you're not the brightest viewer of these episodes. It might take a couple of watch-throughs. But...
and apparently I need 3? Is that it? Is that what she hit?
That's one of the things on Discovery, is that, especially this season, but kind of the entire time, like I said last week, it is a very... high-energy, fast-paced form of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they prioritize expedience over clarity.
Right.
And a lot of times, if you go back and watch it a second time, you do notice a line here or there where you pick up on something. Mm-hmm. And even in the first season, a lot of the stuff that people called out were plot holes are actually explainable if you just pay attention and listen to like the lines of dialogues.
Right.
But, yeah, so I would like them to clarify the red bursts a little bit more. I'm guessing that...
Well, for sure, that's obviously on the agenda, but I think it's not going to happen for a while. And I'm going to make a prediction right now, is that they will at some point, once they start to recognize this pattern of what's going on, are going to, for some reason, obviously they're going to want to save whoever is being threatened, but I think they're going to break up the order in which the bursts want them to go. I predict they will have to break the pattern. For what reasons, I don't know.
We'll see how that plays out, but I do have some hot topics for us to go over, and if you think of anything in addition,
we'll veer
let
around.
me know. But the first thing that I think we need to talk about is we got some more information on Spock's current situation right off the bat at the beginning of the episode, in the opening scene. Dave, what do you think about what we learned about Spock and what's going on with him?
Well, I'm going to say, first of all, clearly we're not going to worry about the ethical question of just prowling around through his room. That's just not even part of it. We're going to take that as we need to move the plot forward, and it happened. I wish there had been a line or two to just suggest, well, we think he's in danger, we got to do it. But they're not going to mess with that.
That's that prioritization of expedience.
Yeah. I think just literally a line would have done it. But anyway, all right. So let's see. What did we learn about Spock? We learned that he essentially checked himself into a psychiatric institute.
No, I think we're in the future now. I think the politically correct term is the Federation Funny Farm. If Star Trek has taught me anything.
Where did they use that? Which one?
That was from Star Trek 3.
3. Okay. Right. Poor McCoy. But anyways, so Spock is off, and he checked himself in for. Does Pike know that it's anything more than nightmares? Does he? He didn't. He has. Spock asked for them to keep it on the down low.
Yeah,
and was emphatic about it. He said. So they both are like, well, we need to go talk to Spock, but we kind of really can't. This is clearly sort of an invasion of privacy and his wishes. What prompted them to do it?
Well, Pike said that the priority of Starfleet investigating the red bursts justified overriding his wishes.
Right. That's probably legit. I gotta say that makes sense. Even though they don't know anything about the red bursts, something so far-reaching has to be important, and they already know it's led them to one weird rescue mission.
Yeah. And the first episode established that, Starfleet is super concerned about this.
Right. So anyway, I don't know that I have strong feelings. It got the plot motivated. It's strange to me to imagine Spock checking himself into an institution. But I actually, and I don't imagine if they get there and they find him, I don't know if it will touch much on mental illness or anything like that. I actually kind of think it'd be nice if they did in a way. But
just to destigmatize mental illness.
It's Lord knows Star Trek has gone down that tropey role many a time of split personalities and maniacs and
Garth of Izar.
First one I thought of, yeah. But yeah, any number of people who are just kind of nutty, and frankly, kind of might have dropped the ball with handling some of what's his name's PTSD in season 1.
Oh, Tyler
Ash, yeah. So, what did you think about it, Fatheree?
I was not as surprised as I'd like to be, because I saw a trailer or a clip somewhere that showed Spock looked like he was wrestling with orderlies.
Oh, interesting.
Who were wearing Starfleet medical uniforms.
I think I did glimpse that, but luckily I was able to put that out of my mind. So, I think that doesn't, I got the full surprise out of it. Something else I thought that was kind of interesting about that scene, or the scenes that followed it, is that when they're trying to figure out what to do, is that when Pike brings up his family history?
Right, so that segues nicely into what the next topic I was going to bring up, and that is the whole science versus faith theme of this episode, and also what we have been led to believe will be the theme of the season. Mm-hmm. But yes, Pike does have that conversation where he explains that his father was both a science teacher and a comparative religion teacher.
Right. He doesn't mention anything about his mom. Do we presume she's passed away, or do we know that?
I didn't get that assumption, but who knows what her job was?
She could have been a stay-at-home mom. But
she could have been a YouTuber / podcaster.
Well, I thought it would be interesting. They made a point you could have had one parent who did one thing and one parent who did another. Instead, it was one parent who embodied both, which may be important to their theme or something. Although I really hope they're not just going to be you ever seen Inherit the Wind? The play?
No.
All right, you know it's about the Scopes monkey trial and...
Yeah. No, I saw that. I saw John Delancey, Q, put on like a show of that on the Star Trek cruise a year ago.
Yeah.
With a bunch of Star Trek actors.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. Do
you know how it ends? The story? You haven't seen the whole thing.
No, but I saw like all the trials.
So in the end, I guess the guy who's playing the attorney for the defense, I think Clarence Darrow, he holds up dramatically. One hand, he's got the Bible, and the other hand, he's got Darwin's book, and he puts them together and walks out with them clasped meaningfully together like they can exist together. It's very symbolic and visual allegory. I hope that they are going beyond that. That we need both. I hope they just have something more to say than that.
Well, yeah, and this kind of makes me nervous just because of my personal feelings about religion.
Right, not a fan.
And I don't mind saying I'm anti-theist. I respect people's religious freedoms, and I respect their faiths. I personally think that life is more fulfilled without that, and I don't think faith is required.
But you wouldn't put Christians in detention camps if you had the chance.
No.
Okay.
Well, maybe if for other reasons. not because of their religion, but like for other stuff. If they pissed me off enough. But no, not because.
We don't need to go into a whole dictatorship plan or anything. Okay.
This is how World War III is going to get started.
But anyway, so he has it in his history to have this, and he will go on in the course of the episode to this will come up again. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that's in his family history.
Because we know from the cage in the menagerie when he's on Talos 4, and the Telosians are trying to torture him, and they put him in like a recreation of hell. Yeah. They tell him from a fable that you heard as a child.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, oh, yeah, like his dad was like teaching him about different religions, and hell came up. We're talking about like the Christianity and other religions that believe in like a fiery hell. Mm-hmm. So, and I can see like as like a little kid, he is probably as a little kid who lives in what we can imagine is a very like secular Star Trek future.
Yeah, and religion comes up very infrequently and so, like, for the Federation.
You hear something like that, but like there's a belief that like when you die, you'll exist on another plane and like a fiery, everlasting
torment.
Mm-hmm. And like I can see that like really fucking with a kid. And so if you're trying to torture this guy as an adult, you pluck out that memory and use it to torture him.
Yeah, that's true. Although what's interesting is something else. His father taught comparative religions. He wasn't like a minister or something like that. Or a rabbi. He was a guy who already by his nature was looking at a wide variety of religions. They actually don't say whether Pike himself was religious.
Right.
If we take the Telosians at their word, or like at their own description, then his dad taught it as a fable and not as truth.
Right. But in this episode, Pike, it's implied that he's not, because he tells the character Jacob, he said, I didn't want to deny you the option to live a life of faith.
Right.
Like, and I thought that was interesting because it reminded me, and I don't want to get like too autobiographical, because I mean, I don't mind talking about myself. I can do it all day, but just
please don't.
I'll spare you all the details.
But let's hit the high points.
I mean, like I grew up in rural Texas around a lot of specifically Southern Baptist influences, and so like when it's pretty obvious that there are some problematic stuff with that.
Sure.
As I got like older and got kind of disgusted with some of these things and wanted to distance myself from it. Mm-hmm. One of the things I noticed was that when I would meet other people, a lot of times people are around the same age as me who grew up in very different settings, where they grew up in secular settings. Uh-huh. And a lot of them have a more favorable approach to religion than I do. And sometimes I would see people, they're almost kind of envious. I'm a big fan of the writer-director Joss Whedon, did Buffy and Angel and Firefly and stuff mm-hmm. like that. And one thing I remember hearing him talk about during a Q&A panel was that he personally is a person without faith, but he writes characters who are religious. Mm-hmm. Most notably on Firefly, you have Shepard Book.
Right.
One of the main characters is a preacher. And I remember Joss Whedon saying in this Q&A session that he wished that he did have faith. He thinks that'd be a cool thing to experience, and he's envious of people who have that. Yeah. So I always thought that was a very weird thing, and that's the kind of the vibe I get from Pike here, is that he kind of wishes that was something he could experience, just probably from growing up, studying it so much.
Sure.
No, I'm not sure how
so many people are torn apart by indecision and pulled this way and that by competing ideas. Star Trek is about that in a way. I absolutely understand. I didn't grow up with any strong religious beliefs either, but I absolutely understand the idea and Whedon's notion of it would be nice to feel absolutely sure of something for fucking once.
Well, that's if you know any hospice nurses, ask them and they'll tell you people that are convinced that they're gonna die and go to an afterlife have a easier time facing death.
Right.
But
there are some practical benefits.
Yeah. So I can definitely understand that envy for us non-believers, but I'm not sure how if Pike does have kind of faith envy, we'll call it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that also combines with how he said that he didn't that he rarely agreed with his dad, the science/religion teacher.
Yeah, but we don't know on what basis he didn't agree with him.
He just says it was a complicated household, and I'm assuming that they've thought that out, and we'll get more on that in future episodes.
Yeah. I would be super interested to hear what more we learn from that.
But speaking of Pike, though, I still love the Anson Mount Pike. The more I see of him, the more I love him, and I'm at the point now where I am getting kind of concerned about the show, knowing that he is inevitably going to leave.
Yeah.
I think that's a very likely chance that he's here for all of season 2 and then gone.
Yeah.
And that kind of scares me because I like him on the show so much.
You remember the last podcast I said, the first thing I said in assessing him was he was dangerously close to stealing the show. And I stand by that. I almost think it would be a smart idea to have something happen to impair him or something like that, or kidnap him or whatever, an episode or 2 down the line from now. So that then the crew has to kind of, the classic disco crew has to kind of work without him on their own. Now, that's not to say I want him to go away. I want him to stay. But he is not the captain of the Discovery. He has to go captain the Enterprise. That's his thing.
And something that I saw a friend post on Facebook earlier was that in Deep Space Nine, Ben Sisko is awarded the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor. Mm-hmm. And after getting to know Captain Pike better now through Discovery, and just knowing his inevitable future where he ends up basically destroying his body and being confined to the wheelchair because he goes and rescues a bunch of cadets is what happens.
Right.
And you can totally see this guy doing that.
Right.
And I really feel like
does it make sort of him more meaningful as a person who influenced things in Trek's future?
Yeah, and I can definitely now really appreciate. Oh yeah, the Christopher Pike Medal of Valor.
Right.
This is totally the guy you would name that after.
Right. He's not like a generic hero in the past now. He's somebody we've seen live and breathe and be heroic and kind of noble. Yeah, and we see him, put his life on the line here when he goes to rescue that kid who, not really sure what's going on with the phaser. I think it might have just been set to some weird discharge setting. It's not an overload because an overload would have been a much bigger explosion. Right. We decided that maybe it was, there was just some kind of, it was like a burst mode or something like that. Enough that he could potentially shield it with his body, which he was trying to take the blast. It's kind of like you would a grenade or something like that. Maybe not even quite that bad. It was definitely kind of choreographed to be he's falling on the grenade. Right. That's probably what Jonathan Frakes said on set or on location when they were shooting this. Yeah. Well, because we did get to go to a location and get off of the sets for a little bit. Yep. Although weirdly, then it was mostly it wasn't a big outdoorsy one with weird alien artifacts. It was inside an old church, which is just fine. That's still cool too. Yeah. And the outdoors, it was a very lovely looking basement. It was all lovingly rendered with dust and age and everything in there. The outdoor shots that we did get surprisingly looked a lot like it was shot in Canada. Yeah, I totally wasn't expecting that, but. Let's see. What else do we got? What you were saying about Pike, you think it might be a good idea for him to get out of the spotlight for a little bit. Yeah.
They kind of did that a little bit here when he got injured, but
yeah, he's a big personality. That's the thing, is he's a larger than life personality. Burnham is kind of a quieter thinker, although she has these moments where she becomes very animated. And like I say, his confidence it's the kind of personality type that registers in action stories and fictional settings. The confident person who knows what they're doing and takes charge of a situation. We're really programmed to kind of warm to those characters fast.
Yeah. We also saw him do a lot of cool leadership stuff that wasn't action related. He's very concerned about the people on the planet. You know, he right off the bat, he's super strict about we have to adhere to the Prime Directive. Or I love that they call it General Order 1.
Yeah.
Like they did on the original series.
Yeah, it's cool.
He's we see him have concern for the kid who... And this is kind of like a scary notion. It's kind of a trope. Like sometimes you see that in cinematic stories, or like a kid holding a gun or playing with a gun.
Right.
I mean, that's like one of the scariest things you can see.
Right.
But then we also see him. He has the respect for Jacob that he beams back and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna be open.
He treats the Prime Directive the way all Trek captains treat the Prime Directive.
Yeah, and I have
more of a suggestion.
I have no problem with him revealing himself to a guy who pretty much had already figured out oh no, you came here on a starship. Your fellow humans from back on Earth. The planet didn't get destroyed in World War III. It continued without us, and you have advanced technology.
Right. Yeah, it is also weird because if you think about it, this is not the kind of show... It's not... Next Generation like to kind of talk over ideas kind of more at length. They just did. There were more conversations about the morality of things where they would talk about it for 5 minutes. This is not quite that show. It's a little bit more action-oriented. And but were they to talk about it at length, I would say that, they could certainly bring up that it's essentially... It's an Earth colony, really. Yes, enough time has passed and enough confusion has gone by that... They don't think of themselves that way, but it is effectively a colony, and I feel like you can make probably a good case for breaking General Order 1.
Well, and I think you should also factor in that when these people were taken from Earth, they were only a decade away from Earth inventing warp speed and meeting the Vulcans.
Right.
So they just barely missed the mark on learning what warp drive was.
Ballpark. Now that said... His gift to Jacob at the end of a Starfleet battery pack thing seemed like the kind of thing where is it the Iosians that were the piece of the action aliens?
Oh yeah.
You give that to them, and then 10 years later, there's going to be a starships launching all over the place.
Those people already have whole cities and societies, and their own pretty high level technology. These people don't have much. In fact, it kind of was like The Walking Dead. It looked like The Walking Dead, especially when you have an actor from The Walking Dead walking around there.
Right.
It almost has kind of a post-apocalyptic survivalist thing going on.
Do you feel like the portrayal was meant to were they being harmed by their? Do you think they were a stagnant culture? Did they suggest that in your eyes?
We didn't suggest that, but I see that.
Right, we didn't see much outside the church and stuff like that. The weird thing is that the one guy who sort of tried to see beyond that was also the guy who, and this is another maybe faith and science going hand in hand, when he lights up the church at the end with the battery that Pike gives him, he's using the technology he got to kind of reinvigorate faith, it seems like.
I didn't interpret it as that.
Now, how'd you interpret it?
Because he was saying that...
Or was he bringing enlightenment?
Yes, that's how I interpret it. Because that's him saying, this is what science and technology can do.
If he had gone to, someplace else where he had, a workshop that he had off to the side and lit that up, then I would have said, yes, you're absolutely right. That's clearly what they intend.
Well, this is, the only place that had, electricity running through the walls and had, lights sockets and stuff.
The writers made it so. They could have easily written it that he had some old blacksmith shop nearby where he was working on his stuff or whatever. He could have had any kind of little tinkerer's workshop or something like that could have represented science.
I think you're being more fixated on that than how you kind of accused me of being about Burnham sneaking into Spock's room and how you just need to let that go. It's not, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. That's what I think you're doing with this church getting lit up.
Man, it looked like that's like, and if this were in a movie and like the Blues Brothers, there'd be like music and James Brown would be flipping and shit. It looked like some the holy roller event was about to go down at that church, and we have zero idea what happened afterwards. We have nothing to go on except our guesses. So you could be right. But he made the church glow. I'm just saying that's what it looks like when miracles and things happen like that in movies and stories.
Yeah, then you also have to think about, like, well, how are the people going to interpret that? They're going to be like, oh, the gods came and gave us, like, this holy battery from the stars.
Well, I feel like Jacob's in for a tough time because he got the personal satisfaction of knowing, and they did make it clear that he felt satisfied with that.
Yeah, and I was going to be disappointed if they didn't do something like that.
I know, I was hoping that Pike would go back. And so he said he got personal satisfaction, but he also saw them. They all saw them beam out, and the other lady interpreted, like, the church leader, whatever she was,
the old mother.
She clearly interpreted it as a miracle. Now he knows it's not a miracle, and it's hard to imagine him being satisfied with them clinging to that belief. And he actually has a bit of technology that, at the very least, doesn't look like anything they've had before and would go kind of bolster his story. So I think he is in for some tough decisions to make, or maybe not so tough, as to how much he wants to reveal to them.
Yeah, I mean, like, he can, like, use that battery as an example to be like, no, like, this is, like, technology. There were other humans that built this. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, science is actually useful.
Yeah.
But I take back what I said a second ago about, like, they don't really point out that they're kind of a stagnant culture. Mm-hmm. They do kind of with Burnham, who to me was the most relatable character in this episode, because she is the non-believer. Like, I put, like, science and rationality first. She seems to be a person who, like, doesn't have much use for religion. Mm-hmm. And she says that, like, the religion these people cling to is a lie. And you get the impression, like, she wanted to be like, everything you know is a lie.
Didn't Jacob say? Didn't he outright ask her? And then right before the phaser thing happened, it was put to her to, like, are you guys from the stars or not?
Right.
And she looked really torn, like...
And I would be, too. I would totally be... If I was there and my captain was like, we can't break the Prime Directive, and I was like, man, look at this guy. He's doing everything right. He's trying to think about this rationally and figure this out, and I gotta stand here and lie to him. And it even made me think... Because, I mean, I try to be a pretty open and honest person, and for all my faults that I have, like, I'm open and honest with people. And part of that is an influence on me from Star Trek.
Yeah.
The Next Generation episode, The First Duty, when Picard gives young Wesley Crusher the speech, and me as, like, a young kid in the audience watching this, I got the speech from, like, Daddy Picard. Right. About how, you know, a Starfleet officer's first duty is to the truth. You know, be it historical truth, or scientific truth, or personal truth. And that's why Wesley shouldn't have lied when they were investigating what happened with that flight accident.
Right.
And
so you took to heart that moment.
I did, actually, yeah. And
you know, they mentioned the Prime Directive a lot too.
Well, yeah, and so that was like a conflict in Burnham that, like, I could relate to.
Right.
Like, I would be like, oh yeah, I would totally be sweating that if I was her.
Do you think by having Pike jump on the phaser and her not have to answer it, that they took the story took a turn that wasn't as bold as it should have been? That it should have been her moment to actually say something or not? I
mean, sometimes you got to do that stuff to tell your narrative.
Right. It's like we can't have them down there on the planet debating things forever.
Yeah.
And
well, Next Generation probably would have.
That's true. That's true. They did like that a little bit more.
But yeah, not here. But yeah, so Burnham and I kind of like the opening, where she's like, the signal's coming from the structure. And Pike's like, yeah, it's a church, Burnham. It's obviously a church. It's the most churchiest looking church ever. And he's like, don't you know about, like, religions and stuff? And she's like, oh, I read about it. But
yeah. Yeah, he's got a little bit of that kind of like country boy thing almost that Kirk did too, which is that he's like...
It's from Mojave.
Yeah, well, wherever...
Whatever that is.
However that works in the future. But yeah, he's...
you ride horses there and jump into streams.
Right. He seems like... He's a little bit like, come on, this is common sense, everybody should know this. What are other high points? What else?
I think we have to talk about two things we need to hit on. One is Joanne Owasakin, and then we need to talk about, like, what happened on the ship.
Right.
But let's do Owasakan first. She is the other member of the landing party.
Everybody's getting more name time, by the way. Not just her. Like, they hit her name a few times, but also Detmer, of course, and whoever the cyborgy person is.
Arium.
Yeah, that's going to take a while for me. He's going to have an episode.
She,
whatever.
Well, I mean, we don't know. We're assuming Arium's. No, I think they actually say she at some point. But regardless. But yeah, so we get to see Owasakan do something, and this really reminded me of how characters were often used in the original series. This kind of felt like something about like, oh yeah, like take Sulu. He knows about botany, or something like that.
Right.
So take her because she knows about how to live amongst primitive people.
Right. Wait, why did she... What was... Oh, they said that because she grew up with... they said a Luddite settlement or family or something like that. So, which it's
so
I don't know
weird to me.
Yeah, I don't know what they mean by that. I mean, I know what a Luddite historically is, but was that just a shorthand for... She grew up with a Mormon, not Mormon family, but like a Quaker family.
She also said that she was a family of non-believers, so they were basically like atheist Amish.
Yeah.
Which I have a hard time picturing what between now in society and the 23rd century will lead to that being a thing, but I guess it happens.
I could easily see something where you kind of felt that technology had kind of run rampant and that going to the stars has put Earth at risk so often, it puts us on the radar of the Borg and all this stuff, that I could see a sect forming that's like, yeah, we believe in the Borg and all these dangers in space, but we think that you can live a fulfilling life without having to run at that stuff all the time. So I can see it coming up. But whatever the case, that was her upbringing. Maybe we'll learn more about it, maybe we won't.
We still didn't get like a whole lot from her. I mean, we got like some details about like her story, growing up. I don't really know much about her as a character other than she knew how to use a magnet to unlock the bolt on the cellar door. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was very obvious writing. Just let's give this character something good to do, and then let's go back to ignoring her.
Right.
But I mean, like the way Discovery is structured is that we have like 6 or so main characters that we focus on, and then we have the secondary characters, and she's clearly a secondary character. Mm-hmm. I'm still just happy that they're doing more with them. I think there's still room for improvement, but I'm not complaining. Let's let the show get there if it's going to get there.
Well, we're getting to that point where Detmer, they're like focusing on her ability to pilot pretty well. This episode emphasized it as much as they would, go on to with, say, Sulu.
And we had that cool character moment with her where she says a very Sulu-esque thing when she says, I've had my pilot's license since I was 12.
Right.
And they didn't really focus on the idea of, like, Sulu being a badass pilot like I wish they had in the original series. They never really brought that up until Star Trek 4 when he's like, oh yeah, I know how to fly this old Huey helicopter.
Right.
Like, when the plot that they were telling needed him to have, like, oh yeah, he's actually, like, a super cool badass pilot. Like, then that became a character detail.
Right, and then kind of retroactively we map it on there mentally into those old episodes.
And the Kelvin movies
because it is cool, yeah.
In Star Trek Beyond, we see Sulu doing some cool piloting and stuff.
Yep, and they played up his combat skills too. So yeah, I'm glad that they're starting to get that place with Detmer.
It sounded like something Tom Paris would say, because Voyager was really the first time where they had they made a big deal of the pilot being like. Again, the plot needed it, because the first episode, he's, like, the only guy who could, pilot into the Badlands.
Right.
So that's why they had to get him out of the rehab penal colony.
Yeah.
But he was, the whole 7 seasons of Voyager, they made it clear, he is, the best pilot on the ship. He's one of the best in Starfleet ever. And then they kind of did that with Travis Mayweather on Enterprise. Mm-hmm. And so I'm glad to see that carrying on, because it was a cool thing that Star Trek really kind of ignored for a long time. So oh yeah, you can do cool ship piloting stuff with your helmsman.
Right. Reading some of the books growing up, I would also see them take, Uhura and focus in, in a book on her linguistic skills and, just her breadth of knowledge and not do, goofy throwaway jokes like her stammering through Klingonese and stuff
Star
like
Trek
that.
6.
She was like, everybody was kind of the best there was at what they did, except maybe Chekhov.
But just the B story of this episode, we get to see Saru captaining.
Right. The B story is them saving the planet from destruction.
Right. We get to see Tilly sciencing.
Yep.
And they also set up...
There's some, like, Tilly gets a lot of good scenes. She got a lot of screen time in this episode, and like a lot of humor woven in there, as well as setting up another mystery, which will continue.
I like seeing Mary Wiseman in the little hospital gown, which looks a lot like what Burnham was wearing in the first episode, the Vulcan Hello, when she was getting her like radiation healed.
Oh yeah. So do you just like the aesthetics of their future costume wear where people's butts might stick out of it in the present, but they don't in there? Or you specifically like it on Mary Wiseman?
No, I specifically like it on Mary Wiseman.
Okay, yes, I can agree with this. She also, by the way, continuing the I'm going to say the Kelvin verse energy. She does some running around, and there's a fair amount of like running around on the ship to get stuff done. Big ideas,
they don't
and
walk.
eureka moments.
Saru actually tells Stamets, well, you better run to get into the spore drive chamber.
Yeah, I kind of like that. That was a little, we've got 2 minutes to do this, and it was funny to see Saru of all people being like, well, you'd better hurry.
Yeah. Move like your ass is on fire is what I would have told him.
Yeah,
but
I actually think it's weird to say, but I think that sort of kinetic thing is like a visual representation of the sort of eagerness of young cadets. And I think that was something Abrams...
She's not a cadet anymore. She's an ensign.
Right, but like I guess the Trek, like the Federation as a whole, feels like it should have a sort of youthful energy to it. And Abrams really recognized that in the 09 Trek, and it was such a big part of its aesthetic was everybody's running everywhere that it was almost like a little comical how often it happened there. But I think they were smart to pick up on it.
That's funny that you bring that up because like the last episode to me was the one that like really felt like Star Trek 09.
Sure.
As Brian pointed out last week.
Yeah.
And like this episode to me, like it really felt like the original series. But I felt
There's
like
sprinklings of Kelvinverse though.
It could have been like any Star Trek show. I think you could have done this story, but but yeah, so we have cool moments with Tilly, and part of that is where she's seen the apparently like her dead friend May Ahern.
Right. We won't learn about it until the end. She just thinks it's some cheerful new person at first who's kind of buddies up with her. Which I thought at first was, and I think you said you thought so too, was going to maybe be like a romantic interest, or at least somebody who was crushing on her or something.
Very briefly, but then like when Saru and the doctor come into sickbay and they don't acknowledge her, I was kind of like, oh, she's something that Tilly's imagining.
You recognize the Sixth Sense style?
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking, like, maybe this will be something with, like, dead people, because they had an earlier scene where Stamets talked about, he said he was reluctant to go back into the mycelial network, because this is the first time I think he confessed to anybody that he had encountered, like, some kind of recreation of Hugh.
Right. There's an important thing in that story in that he made a point to confess that to Tilly, his big sort of secret, that he had seen his lover. I was actually frustrated at the beginning when Burnham is on the verge of telling Pike that she saw that angelic thing and didn't, because it frustrates me when smart people
but then she did.
Don't trust their own senses. But yes, by the end of the story, I was like, okay, this was a story about a person who was being fairly logical-minded about it, acknowledging she was in a weird place mentally at the time, and that it could easily have been a hallucination. And she does tell him. But I thought it was interesting that, like, that Stamets was pretty easy to tell Tilly his secret. Not easy. He obviously had held on to it a little bit, but...
And then it was a cool thing when he got out of the spore chamber, and he had that pouty look on his face.
Yeah.
Not to, brush it off. Because it's kind of like a serious moment where, like, I get the impression that he was disappointed that he didn't see him.
Right.
Even though before he was saying, like, he was scared to do that.
Right.
Then he was sad when it didn't happen.
Right. That's a nice little subtle bit of visual acting there. Did you think, did you like their rescue, their kind of big idea rescue of using, basically tractor beaming this super massive chunk of rock and using it to pull the rest of the asteroid belt?
Yeah, see, and that part kind of made me think more like the Next Generation.
Right.
That felt like something like they would do, like using like tractor beams and gravitational fields.
They just kind of set it up a little bit faster when they did it in this one. But yeah, and of course they have a bigger budget for it, so it looks pretty badass when they do it.
Yeah, no, like the ships look so fucking good in this season. Mm-hmm. Like I'm digging it. I think that's all the big things on this episode. We didn't talk a lot about like May Ahern, the girl who appears, but
the ghost girl.
That's clearly like a new mystery they're setting up for down the road. But something with the mycelial network is allowing the living to connect with the dead.
Speaking of the mycelial network, I did want to mention, it was kind of funny that like it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that they were done with it. And then when they're like, oh, it's the only way we can get to the red burst.
I never thought they would be completely done with it. And I was glad that they brought it back up because I need more resolution with it. I need to know why that technology is just like forgotten about.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were going to kind of brush it off maybe to bring up later or something like that. But yeah, Pike is like...
Yeah, they brought it back rather quickly.
Yeah, they kind of... You know, this is one of those things that would have been more probably hotly debated on Next Gen. But they say, yeah, basically we're allowed... You know, it's dangerous tech, but we were allowed to use it in the war with the Klingons. And he's like, well, this seems pressing too. Fire it up.
Oh, just his reaction to it as well. Like, really? A tardigrade? And then he's like, oh, so you're going to... travel on a magic mushroom highway or you know whatever he said. Yeah. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how I reacted to it.
Right. It sounded bonkers.
Yeah. When I was like piecing that together during like the trailers and stuff for season 1, and I was like, I know this sounds crazy, but I think their ship has some new kind of transportation mode that uses mushrooms. And I remember telling you about that, and you thought that I was
insane.
Yeah, you thought I had like some bizarre like fan theory that would never come anywhere close to being true.
Turns out you were right after all, Fatheree. I should always trust you. I've got a few other little notes I wanted to mention. One was when they heard that the broadcast from World War III era that was like, you know, that they were under siege or whatever. Pike hears that and he's like immediately like red alert. I appreciate it that he was so quick to go to red alert because it always kind of sometimes like when they're like, whoa, there's a ship of unknown origin approaching, it's locking weapons, and sometimes they take forever to get to the red alert and charge up those shields. I kind of appreciated that this guy was just, man, it's just sounds dangerous, red alert, you know.
He's turning into one of my favorite captains.
Yeah, that's true. Saru gets a moment with Tilly, where actually I forget the full context of it. He was talking about her trying to prove herself.
Yeah, when she's recovering in sickbay after she hurt herself,
and he's like, "Lie down," and
he puts his hand on her, and I'm like, I don't know if like a boss is supposed to do that to an employee in this day and age, but I put his hand on her shoulder.
It hadn't occurred to me. He's literally like, she's like, she was physically hurt. She was like, in a special effect that looked like she could have been killed. She got like smashed up against the wall.
I promise you someone's going to complain about Saru putting his hand on her.
You think so?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's out there somewhere.
Yeah, probably so. But I thought it was interesting he mentioned when he was trying to assimilate into human culture or Federation culture, that he learned 90 languages. I thought that was a kind of a cool little side thing. And then she's like, do you know them fluently? And he's like, the point is... so I thought that was kind of a fun little bit in there. I also thought it was interesting that how quickly this is becoming a bridge-based show. Like, or it seems like it is. They've had 2 episodes with heavy bridge concentration after a first season with almost none. So it looks like they are continuing that, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, and part of that is doing the A story, B story thing where they kind of have Pike being like the Riker role, where he's like, he beams down to the planet, he takes command, he does the actiony stuff.
Yep.
And then Saru, in their co-captaincy, Saru is back on the ship, commanding the ship like Picard would often be. Mm-hmm. And so that's a cool little...
True. Saru did get to shine a bit there.
Yeah, and even last week, when they're trying to beam the patients up, and Saru is commanding the ship, and they're having to keep the shields down so they can use the transporters, but maneuver through the asteroids to get close enough. Mm-hmm. And they're giving Saru stuff to do, even though he's not like the full acting captain that he was at the end of season 1. They're still putting in an effort to give him stuff to do, and I think we'll see more Captain Saru in the future.
In this episode, it occurs to me they did 2 big things I think that they wanted to with him, which is one, they showed him to be the guy who takes charge when there's like a danger and an action scene, and he gets shit done the same way Pike does, not in the exact same way, but he was the one who told Stamets to run. He's like, okay, this is the plan. I like it. Let's make it happen. And he also did his sort of the more fatherly role of trying to advise Tilly.
He's had the clearest arc of any Discovery character.
Yeah, that's true. Last thing I wanted to mention, just among random notes, is that the stained glass window representation we see of the Red Angel.
I thought it looked like Ultron from the comics.
To me, it looked almost a little bit more like a mech suit. But yeah, like Ultron kind of looks like a mech suit. But it looked like a helmet for one thing on the head. No matter like what it's like a helmet or a robotic entity, and the wings. I think maybe that the sort of skeletal type wings. It looks sort of like anime type, like some Battle Angel Alita kind of thing.
I think some of the Gundams have like
those bone that's probably what I'm thinking of. Anyway, it seems clearer and clearer like it's going to be either some new alien race or some sort of artificial intelligence or robot thing.
Or it could be an Iconian. This is a popular fan theory.
Remind me, what are those?
They were established on an episode of Next Generation and one episode in the DS9, but they were an ancient race of aliens. They built like those portal things that you can like transport yourself instantly from planet to planet. And in the Next Generation, they actually find their home world of Iconia, but it's all in ruins. They're extinct now. They're a big thing in Star Trek Online, though. Like, they come back, and the way that they look in Star Trek Online is kind of similar to a Red Angel. I'll show you a picture of it, but...
can we flash it up while we're talking about it for those watching this visually?
Yeah, like, they'll be looking at it now if you're watching the video on YouTube or on Facebook.
We've all learned something.
But, if that's all you got, then I think we're ready to move on to Easter eggs. I feel like we're leaving a lot unsaid about May Ahern. Just like the weird idea of like the mycelial network, and Stamets kind of explains about how, mushrooms are like the recyclers of the universe, using stuff from like real life Paul Stamets talks about. So they're still using some like that weird Brian Fuller mushroom stuff. But how everything is recycled, and I'm not really sure, like, is he talking about like our consciousness can be like transmitted to somewhere else? Right. This mycelial network obviously
sort of fits that notion that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form or whatever.
Yeah, and this idea of because I don't want to see them get too like spiritual or too pious in Star Trek, because that's just not what I want out of Star Trek, and it's never been that. And I don't want to see that happen. But if they come up with this idea where like they need an afterlife for the story, and they explain it of like, okay, like this mycelial network that we've established, how it connects all these different points in space, it also can connect our consciousness, and that can be like reflected after we die, and some other part of the mycelial network.
Right.
That's a cool like science fiction-y way of explaining an afterlife without getting all like mystical or anything.
In short, it seems like May is going to be tied into however they possibly will resurrect Culber, which we think is likely to happen.
And it still kind of feels like a little bit more like Doctor Who than Star Trek to me. Where like in Doctor Who, where like the science fiction often uses some of those like bigger than real life concepts, like the Doctor is basically like a lonely god, and or he's like a wizard. But like they all come up with like sci-fi ways of explaining it. It kind of feels more like that than like traditional Star Trek.
I could see that.
But I'm curious to see it unfold, and so far it hasn't rubbed me the wrong way. So.
I mean, I think they're not going to be like, this is like everybody is like caught up in the mycelial network when they die. I think it may be more of a, well, I was going to say Culber's proximity to it, like when he died. But then again, how does that explain May? She was clearly...
she's been dead for a few years now.
She's been dead for a few years, yeah. Maybe it's the people who were... Yeah, this sort of makes sense thematically. The people who remember them, although Tilly did not immediately place her. I guess maybe she didn't know what she would look like at that age.
Well, it sounded like they had like lost contact after junior high.
Right. But they had been close before, so maybe like the people that we remember or our subconscious remembers resonate when you're like that close to like a mycelial concentration.
Or it could be a malicious entity is taking people's memories of people that they, even though it still doesn't make sense because it wasn't like May as like a close loved one.
No, that's what's kind of weird, and I don't think they want to use like ultimately like have Culber return via some evil entity, some Red Jack. But that said, it could be something that is trying to do something malicious, and Stamets' love or whatever, or their mutual love kind of like pushes it away from him. That's wild speculation, though. It's just, I feel sure that this plot line will lead to Culber's return.
Yeah, in whatever form that takes.
In
And I don't
whatever
know. I
form
don't know
that
if it'll be a permanent return.
Maybe he'll come as like a little mushroom dude from Mario style. He'll look like Toad.
Yeah, maybe that's what the mycelial network does to you. But we'll have to wait and see. But
Easter eggs.
so there were a few Easter eggs this episode. When they beam down to the planet and approach the people of New Eden, Pike says that they're visiting from the north.
Uh-huh.
That's the same thing that Archer said in a similar episode of Enterprise, North Star. Season 3 of Enterprise, when they find a bunch of people from the Old West who were taken to a planet by aliens that enslaved them, and they set up like a cowboy town.
Yeah.
And Archer is like disguised as a cowboy and rides into town, and he tells these displaced humans that he's, visiting from up north.
Uh-huh. That sounds a very Trek trope thing. Didn't the Doctor in the Ninth Doctor say that didn't Billy Piper, I can't say her character's name suddenly.
Rose.
Didn't Rose say something like
Rose, how he says it. In a northern accent because he's from northern England.
Right, she's like, how come you sound like you're from the north? And he's like, lots of planets have a north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Yankees on every world. But we also have the distress signal beacon in the basement of the church.
Uh-huh.
It was making the same sound for a distress signal that we would hear in Balance of Terror on the original series.
Oh, interesting. I did not catch that. That's very cool.
Yeah, even though it's kind of weird that this World War III distress signal is still being used 300 years later, but whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's almost an insider's thing that maybe isn't meant to be a serious continuity deal.
Tilly also mentions drinking Ryzen Mai Tais.
Mm.
So we know the planet Ryza, the ultimate vacation world, has been featured in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise.
Is that the one where Picard met Vash?
Yeah.
Okay. Speedo planet.
And the last Easter egg I found came from when Tilly was looking up her old friend May and the class of 2247 at Musk Junior High.
Yep.
So 47 being the ultimate Star Trek number, my personal favorite number, and I'm always happy to see it pop up in Star Trek.
This is not an Easter egg per se, but it was just a small thing that I enjoyed, is that I don't know if it began with the previous episode or if it had been featured in any first season of Discovery, but that trademark TOS era bosun's whistle, like the captain on the bridge kind of attention.
I'm not counting that as an Easter egg.
I know, I said it's not exactly an Easter egg. I'm just saying, I like that little... I like hearing it. It's like hearing...
You whistled that pretty well.
Thanks. It's like hearing the trademark sound of the doors opening, whooshing open on the Enterprise when we briefly saw it. It's just one of those sounds that's so associated with good vibes. From
I was actually making a mental note to cut this out because I don't want to add that to my Easter eggs just for time. But your whistling was so good, I'm leaving it in.
Wow. Splice it in somewhere else if need be. It's important. The people have to know, Fatheree. They must know of the bosun's whistle.
If any of y'all have any Easter eggs that we missed, be sure to let us know.
I don't think they could possibly find anything. I dare them to. They can't.
Yeah, I have a pretty keen eye, so if you can spot something I didn't, that says a lot.
Oh, if they could humiliate Fatheree, though, it'd be so worth it. Please do it.
But we're not going to move on to our mailbag, where we're just going to read out some comments and messages that we received through various platforms.
Yeah, keep coming with these so that we can do more of this interaction, which will be fun. Hit it.
So starting off with Adam B. Owen on Facebook, he had some thoughts for last week's episode. This is what he had to say. Personally, I loved the episode. While it was a little too action-heavy for Trek, they are definitely veering away from the darkness of Season 1, which is refreshing. Pike is awesome. He's a very unique captain, much more affable and paternal. His moment of saying, "I'm not Lorca," was really great. I loved seeing Stamets' interaction with Tilly, and, despite his cold exterior, you see him grieving his loss of Hugh. I also thought Jet Reno was an interesting character too. Very quirky and focused on her skill set, even when routing it into medical as opposed to engineering.
I think I'm with him on all that stuff, by the way. I'm just about all those points. The action is the action heaviness bothering you at all?
No, in fact, I think they've been pretty light on the action. Or the action that we've been seeing in Season 2, it's more like adventure-driven than like violence-driven. That's
true. That's true. And I think, of course, the first episode they wanted to show off a little bit, show some special effects, so it probably was especially adventure action heavy. Anyway, what else did he say?
You know, I just thought of this, but like the first episode is supposedly where the budget got blown and got the showrunners fired.
Yep.
But Alex Kurtzman directed that episode, and then he took over the show after them. So was Kurtzman just trying to like make the most expensive episode ever and get the showrunners fired so he could just run the whole thing himself?
That kind of thing, I'm sure happens.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
But
let's get that one rolling.
Yeah, Adam, I'm pretty much on board with what you're thinking. And then on Twitter, PJ, who has appeared on Tex-Trek before, he did the live reactions to the Short Trek episodes with me and Starfleet Boy. So those are still on YouTube if you want to check those out. See what we thought about Short Treks. But PJ had the following to say via Twitter. So far, my top 2 episodes of the series are this one and Despite Yourself. Frakes just knows how to do Trek. So yeah, those are
this
the 2
episode
episodes
we just watched?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was directed by Jonathan Frakes, and then Despite Yourself, that was the first Mirror Universe episode last year.
Yeah.
This is where Burnham had that cool elevator fight. In the turbo lift.
Yep.
With the Mirror Universe Connor.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure Frakes knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
How involved is he this season?
I don't know if he's directing any... I think he might be directing 2. He might have one more coming up down the pipeline.
Yeah, I would always be happy to see him returning, absolutely.
Oh, and then we also have a comment on YouTube from last week's podcast that I just wanted to share because we get a lot of comments from this guy. But Farpoint Station, he says that you should own Eagle Moss shares at this point. That's quite the collection. So, yeah, if you watch this on YouTube or on Facebook or wherever our videos are available... You might see some of my Eagle Moss ships in the background, but
you know when we did our unboxing video of the what was it, the Loot Crate, the Star Trek Loot Crate,
when our Mirror Universe doppelgangers did that,
right
after we sent them that present, they didn't like it either.
Yeah, that was lame. But
the Loot Crates got canceled now, so I think they were a part of that.
It makes a lot of sense. They put out so much bad press. By the way, I think we may have another Loot Crate to go through, though.
Yeah.
Now, I think we might have joked at the time. They did not actually send us those. We're not connected with anybody. They don't send us free loot. But I just want to say I'm open to it. If somebody wants, if Eagle Moss wants to hook up Fatheree with some cool stuff, we'll display it in the back. We'll sell out.
Yeah.
Actually, we probably won't. But
I'll display it, but I'll still. You're not getting any favors from me other than just saying, like, look at these cool ships.
I'm just saying...
That's that open honesty I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm too honest for my own good.
Right, that's absolutely true. I can tell people as Fatheree's friend.
I know people online that are sponsored by Eagle Moss, and they still sometimes, like, complain about, like, oh, yeah, this model came in broken, or, like, it's like some bad details. I mean, overall, people tend to love those, but let's just be honest and not bullshit anybody.
But I think we can honestly say those ships are pretty boss.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan. And I think that's everything we have for this week, but we will be back next Sunday talking about the next Star Trek Discovery episode, Point of Light.
Point of Light.
Is that boring?
It sounds boring, yes. It's no the butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's whininess or whatever that one was.
Butcher's knife cares not for the lamb's cry.
Ballpark. But I'll see how it is in context. The episode titles, I do like them when they're a little bit more dramatic or Shakespearean or whatever. But it's not really a big thing.
Wait till next week. Wait till you see it in context.
That's right.
Because as Lorca said, context is for kings. And Pike was also talking up context in this episode.
I want to make a con pun, but I don't have one ready.
Context!
That's right. That's how it is. When we notice any, we want to clarify anything in the future, that's what you have to scream first.
Right on. So we'll sign off for now. We'll be back next Sunday. And until then,
Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at Tex-Trek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.